I'm going to Catholic school. We go to church mass every morning. Okay. I could repeat the mass prayers and all the words verbatim because they were the same all the time. Yeah. But the key here is that I started to have confusion. She said that she had a dream before the missionaries came to visit with her about an angel blowing a horn.
Ooh.
And there's a place here waiting for you. For your business, yeah, we're on the Lord's time, sharing His love and His light.
Welcome to another episode of Brothers in the Foyer. I'm here with my brothers Mo, Isaiah, Crispin, and Christian. Oh yeah. And then we have a special guest today, my mother, Sherri Camp. We got Mothers in the Foyer today. This is going to be a great episode where we are able to understand a little bit more about where she comes from and the inspirational story and her conversion story of coming into the church. Before we go ahead and get into that first, though, we want to give a shout out to Serve Clothing. Serve Clothing has all your needs which you may want. They have shirts, they have sweats, they have dress shirts, everything. It's a shirt with the vents, breathable, so you can be able to not sweat while you're in the office or in the mission field. Great clothes. Use our code FOYERFAM and go to serveclothing.com when you go and check out. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Absolutely.
Share this with your friends, family, and those who aren't familiar with Brothers in the Foyer. Go ahead and help share the word because more people are able to learn more about us, the more hearts that we can reach. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about Sherri Camp. Sherri Camp is the genealogy librarian at the Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library and has been a genealogist for over 30 years. She holds degrees in history and sociology, a master's in liberal studies from Washburn University, and a genealogy certificate from BYU. She's a founding president of the Kansas chapter of Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, AUGS, and served in as the national president and vice president there as well. She's also founded the Kansas Network to Freedom, which educates the public on the Underground Railroad. Sherri authored the African American Topeka, documenting 150 years of Black history in the city. She has presented at national conferences and teaches genealogy workshops across the country. Active in her community, she leads efforts to preserve African American history and genealogy. She is married and a mother of 4 and has 14 grandchildren. Welcome, Sherri Camp.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Mama.
Those 5, that includes 5 bonus.
5 bucks.
There you go. Absolutely.
Grandkids, yeah.
I think they all count, right?
Yeah.
4 kids are doing work. 14.
Well, my sister, she married, got married, and he had 6 kids on his own.
5.
5 kids.
Those are
and
my
so
5
the 5
bonus
bonus
grandkids.
So
yeah.
it just turned his house.
That's awesome.
Okay, so Sherri, thank you so much. Or Mom, I swear, calling you.
I was about to say, man.
Mama Dukes. Can you tell us, just our viewers, tell us a little bit more about you? Because we kind of got an overview of your little bio, but can you give us a little bit more of just your upbringing, where you came from, how many siblings you got, all that fun stuff?
Okay, so I am one of 6, number 2.
All right.
4 girls, 2 boys. We were raised in Kansas City, Missouri.
All right.
In the hood.
Good.
So, none of that Johnson County stuff.
Okay. Let them know.
Right? So, one of the things I remember the most about being a kid is we moved every 2 years. And it was like clockwork. We moved every 2 years. And it was kind of weird. At one point my mom had bought a house. And I still think we only lived there 2 years. I don't really remember that because that was really early on. But there was 4 of us for the longest time. And then in the early 70s, my mom had 2 more kids. So that's a long story, but not necessary here. But the key here is that we lived together with my grandparents. And when I say my grandparents, I mean my grandmothers. So we had a real matriarchy going along. So I had my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my mother, and that was our nuclear family.
Okay.
So when it comes to strong women, yeah.
Hey.
That's what I come from.
Absolutely.
So that's yeah.
Yeah, that makes it Grandma Frida. Right.
Grandma Frida, Grandma's sister. You remember Grandma's sister?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are their names.
okay.
Yeah, 'cause sister, her real name was Lenora, but she had a restaurant called Sisters. And so that's why we call her Grandma.
Okay.
I did not know that. Okay, well, I just learned that today.
You learned.
I think this whole episode we're going to be learning a lot. I'm going to be learning a lot because I don't know everything. I mean, I've heard things from the grapevine over the years.
He was the last
so
one, so he was like at the tail end of everything that ever happened.
Oh, gotcha.
So
okay.
he didn't get all the stuff.
everybody's going to be discovering stuff as I discover stuff too.
That's all
You're
right.
going to see my eyebrows raise a lot today. So that was just the main nucleus is a very matriarchal,
Matriarchal.
marriage.
There it is.
Yeah, that word. Home. And what was the dynamic growing up, like just religious wise? I know that you said you went to
I'm going to
Catholic
go
school.
back just a little bit because I can't say that there was a religious tone in our home. There was always a lot of cussing and fussing,
Hey, that's all right.
which was really not my bag, you know. I was a quiet kid. I was, I hung onto my mom's skirt as a little one and wouldn't go to nobody else, she told me. I was an introvert, really, didn't talk to nobody, just kind of quiet. And so all of the noise was too much for me.
I got you.
So it was really, I didn't know any different until I started school, which we went to a private school. My mom, one of the things about her that I found out actually after she died was that she was very, very adamant about education. And so that was a really big deal to her. And I didn't know to what extent she went to make sure we got a good education. But we went to Catholic school, which actually was the best thing that ever happened to me because I learned how to learn. And even as having been a teacher, there is not that kind of education out there. It's really kind of sad that, because every kid learns at their own level, at their own pace. And that's the kind of education that I got. It was individualized. It was, and once you started learning the basics, because, some things you have to learn like your ABCs and the sounds, right? And then you have to learn how to write. And these are things you do over and over and over and over again, which doesn't happen the way it used to back then. Anyway.
No.
And so then after that, we just started learning how to learn like on a Montessori scale. Do you guys understand what Montessori is?
Yes.
Yeah. So, you just learn at your own pace. And so we had what they call SRA, which I don't know if anybody knows what that is anymore, where we had, it looks like what the tests look like today, where you'd have a reading section and then you'd have questions and you give answers. And every level, we would just keep going up levels and we did it individually. So I learned how to learn, which was one of the best things that happened to me as a kid. But then the second thing that happened when I started in grade school, in the Catholic school, is I started noticing the nuns and how quiet and peaceful they were.
Okay.
And I'm like, I like that. I want that.
That's that.
As a little
Relate to
kid,
that.
I'm like, I want that. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew that's what I wanted. But life is what it is, and so you just adjust. I adjusted as a kid, but there was a lot of things that were still hard for me at being a child because my grandmother cussed like a sailor. She was real, and she had these sayings, and she would make people laugh. She was quite a comedian and a performer, and at one point, she could imitate him, and he came to town because, Kansas City's jazz capital, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
He came to town, and she was doing imitations of him. He wanted to take her on the road, and because my grandmother, this is what I'm talking about, would not perform for my great-grandmother, her mother's friends, she says, no, you can't go. And we were thinking, what would have been different in our lives had she had that opportunity?
Absolutely. Go tour with this musician.
Anyway,
That's crazy.
so that was one of the interesting things. But this particular woman, like I say, my grandmother, she was, when I was a kid, we were kind of at odds. And you can imagine, because I was a quiet kid and liked peace, and she didn't.
Did not. per se. Her idea of peace was different. No worries.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, but anyway, so that's kind of the first things I guess I would say I recognized as a child. I saw the difference between peace and not. And so that was one of the first things that kind of was an awakening for me. But I was always kind of like I say, an introverted child and kind of a quiet person. And so I think just sitting still and being quiet was something that appealed to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I got to ask, you're telling us about your background and everything like that. And, at home religion wasn't necessarily pushed as far as like, being a religious family, got to get to church, got to go to Sunday school, these things like that, right? So that wasn't really pushed at home. And then you end up at a private school, a Catholic school, and you notice peace is what sticks out to you there at the Catholic school. So you see peace as something that you want because we'll call it hustle and bustle of the house, was unsettling for you. So you were looking for peace and you found your glimpses of that at school. So what was your, I would say, conversion story like? Because if you grew up in Kansas City, jazz capital of the world, and having a home like you just described, which I can relate to, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the LDS Church was not necessarily on your radar as a child.
No.
Per se. No. So I'm wondering, what about where the transition went from you being in the home you were to Catholic school? How did we end up in the LDS Church?
That's a good question. So there's a lot of transition. One of the things that was true also was my great-grandmother would take us to church with her to St. Stephen's Baptist Church, which was a big church at that time. And oh my gosh, I was baptized into the Baptist church. I had spiritual experiences while there, and spiritual experiences by saying that, in the Baptist church, you get the music going and everything is going and tempo goes up and, you start feeling the spirit. And that's what we kind of explained that to be in the Baptist church, right? And so I felt comfortable enough there because I was having, spiritual promptings, I guess. I started to feel the spirit, or what I understood to be the spirit to be at that point. Right. I had some specific experiences. At one point, I think I was singing in the choir, and I'm still a young kid now, right? I'm maybe 9, 10, somewhere around there, maybe something like that. I'm not used to telling the story, but I was singing in the choir and I got the Holy Spirit. That's what we called it back then.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people still call it that today.
Oh, yeah, catch the Holy Ghost.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly what happened. And so I walked out of the choir stand and into the hallway and I started to hyperventilate.
Okay.
And I mean, it must have been pretty serious because I could see myself sitting there hyperventilating. I don't know what that means. Would you guys? Yeah. And so they called the nurse or whatever, and they put me on a stretcher, and it was taking me to where the nurse's station is. So I'm on the second floor. They take me down the stairs and around the corner and down to the nurse's office. And they apparently somewhere in between there, they call my mom. So my mom's walking up while they're taking me, and my mom says, "Breathe, girl." So it was over after that. I'm just fine.
That sounds like grandma.
And so, but I still equate that to a time where, as an out-of-body experience, I guess something happened.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what, because I was a kid.
Right,
and I didn't have any way of knowing anything about that. But it was after that. So when I got to be about 12, I'm going to Catholic school. We go to church, mass every morning. I could repeat the mass prayers and all the words verbatim because they were the same all the time. And so that was kind of a joke to me, a personal joke. I would be saying it under my breath, whatever was
while they were doing it. Absolutely.
But the key here is that I started to have confusion. So I started, I'm having spiritual experiences in my body, in my mind, but what I had been, the roteness of my religion to that point was there was a conflict, and I can't. I'm 12. I don't. Nobody's teaching me. We didn't have scripture study at home. We didn't have family prayer. So I'm having these things going on inside me, and I remember distinctly at being 12. And that's a big deal because Jesus was 12 when he went to the temple, right? So that's my favorite story about Jesus.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm having these spiritual experiences and not understanding what's going on. And so I remember distinctly the confusion, and I had to make a decision what I believed and what I didn't believe. And so I kind of at that point put away my Catholic upbringing because there wasn't a lot. I mean, I learned about Jesus. There was a book that called Good News for Modern Man, which were stories about Jesus's life, but it wasn't the Bible itself. And I hadn't really up to that point, had any experiences with the Bible. In fact, I think when I was 14, my mom says, well, if you read one of the Psalms or Proverbs every day, I'll give you a quarter for each verse you remember.
Oh wow!
And
do that for me.
I didn't have my own personal set of scriptures. This is something that she said to us, and I'm like,
She set you up.
okay,
Monetary scripture mastery.
but it didn't happen, because there wasn't an opportunity. It wasn't say, okay, here's the book, here's Proverbs, and here's Psalms, and it didn't happen like that. So I'm like, that's kind of the only experience that I had with the Bible, honestly. Really? So, I mean, I knew what it was. I knew we had one somewhere, but I didn't. We didn't.
But as far as like reading or studying or anything like that, that wasn't your experience growing up. Okay.
I mean, I knew some of the stories, because Sunday school and different things. I had opportunities to hear about it. It just wasn't part of my everyday life.
Got you.
It just wasn't there.
I feel the same way too. Like, cause like I went to a Catholic school. My sisters did too. I know what you say about the memorization and all the stuff that they do and stuff, but it's I know exactly what you mean about the connection. Oh yeah. Kind of my family just kind of like drifted away from that a little bit, but
So it's kind of a habit, but not a growth kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, having said that, once I started getting older, my mom started taking us to Unity. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Unity Church of Christianity.
It's like a non-denominational?
Non-denominational.
Okay.
But it was metaphysical. Do you know what that means?
Nope.
It was a lot of heady stuff, That's like, do you know what I mean when I say that?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
So some of the things that we talked about were truth principles. Now you understand that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of metaphysical, and things were talked about more from a metaphysical. I don't know another word to give you guys. Standpoint where you kind of are looking at things from a principle standpoint. So that was my foundation into learning how to understand the principle behind things, as opposed to, like you read the story of just say any of the parables that Jesus taught. You know the story, but knowing what it means, the principle behind it is kind of what I'm talking about. That's metaphysics.
Got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Okay. And so that was my foundation in that. So this is a story that Andrew likes a lot. The fact that not only did my mom join Unity, and I went there all the way up into my 20s.
Oh, okay.
But then my mom also joined Buddhism, and we chanted Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Oh.
Yeah, and so
I got memories of my grandma sitting in the car. She was just literally humming, dude. Just humming out.
yeah, there's something about the sounds that was supposed to be important.
Absolutely. Yes.
She was in it.
That's crazy.
I haven't done any research into the Buddhism stuff, so I have to look at it.
A lot of humming. I just remember.
Yeah, so not only that, she was also in Rosicrucians, and you know what that is, right? That's like Masonic rites, temple stuff. That's all I can say.
No, yeah. I learned about that in sociology.
Grandma was
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. And so I was right behind her.
Okay.
And so this is all of my training kind of growing up. And so a lot of things in my life changed in between all of that time. I'd moved to Houston, lived there for a while, moved back. And
Did you have any kids at the time?
oh, yeah.
How many kids did you have?
Moved to Houston, had a couple.
Yeah, I had 2 kids before I moved to Houston, came back, and then I married, and he died in a train collision. And it was this time that things really changed in my life. So I'm in my early 20s now. So when he died, I didn't have any frame of reference for, how a lot of young people, when they go through Baptist church, they have ways of, or maybe other religions too, have ways of explaining what death is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're
Way to
just
cope
over
with
there.
it.
They've gone over yonder. They've gone home to be with
Absolutely.
God. None of that made any sense to me.
No.
Like, what does that mean?
Gone
What are you
home to
talking
glory.
about? He was here yet today and he's gone this evening. You know what I'm saying? And so what does this mean? And I talked to my Unity minister, and he says, I think you need a grief counselor. I'm like, no, I need to understand.
Right.
There's things that are happening that I know are happening, but I don't understand what's happening. And I need you to explain it to me. And so I stopped going to that church, and then I started going to my sister's church, which she was going to a Pentecostal church. And so, they had their way of exciting the spirit. That's what I call
Oh,
it.
absolutely. I love that. Yes, they do.
And so they'd get the tempo going, and people would be falling out and coming to. Okay. And so I'm like, this is really not it, because, being that quiet person, all that noise. Oh, that's something I missed. I missed it, to tell you guys about Saint Stephen's. This is early on where I had the spiritual experiences. The minister, Reverend Williams, I can remember it to this day. He was preaching, and he kept saying, "God told me to tell you," but he was saying at a tempo that was up here. And my ears were hurting. It was so bad. So in my spirit, I'm like, well, if God told you, why don't he just tell me? I was serious. It's like, I'd rather hear it directly from the Lord's mouth, because this is hurting me.
This is hurting.
But anyway, so I said that because I wanted to get you to understand the things that were happening inside of me. So I had a lot of experiences inside of me that I had no words for. Yeah. So when I got to the point where I'm asking ministers, what's going on here? Because I'm feeling things happening inside me, but I didn't have words for, and I'm trying to get people outside of me to talk to me about it. So I've talked to the Pentecostal minister, and he says, I'm telling him that I'm having these spiritual experiences, or like I feel like a spirit was affecting one of my children. And he says, oh no, that doesn't happen.
Well,
But the spirit can affect them. The spirit.
Anyway, so at this point, I'm pretty angry. I'm really irate, and I stopped going to churches altogether, because I'm like, if you guys can't tell me what I feel like I already know, then I'm in the wrong place.
I got you.
And so that's really kind of the turning point in my life, because it was my mother at this point was living in Casper, Wyoming, and she had friends that were having missionary discussions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And she's like, well, this is my mom. She wants to learn everything. Right. And so she's like, I want to hear that too. And what's interesting is that, and I think this is the story that you remember, she said that she had a dream before the missionaries came to visit with her about an angel blowing a horn.
Ooh. Okay.
And so then, and it didn't take anything for her to join church. She just did. That's just what happened.
Wasn't that the cover of the Book of Mormon?
The blue one?
Yeah, the blue one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is in the 80s. Yeah. So I don't know when they changed the cover.
Yeah.
But anyway, so here she goes now. She's a LDS. She's living in Wyoming. I'm living in Topeka. And my husband dies. And so I went to visit her. And while I was there, you know how it goes, right? She sicked the missionaries on me.
Oh, absolutely.
And she had the missionaries come and have dinner with us. And so this is the first opportunity that I had to talk to somebody about what was going on inside of me. To hear 19-year-old kids are having a conversation with me about the spirit world, and things that I understood, but had no opportunity to talk to anyone about.
Right.
So it was just like, I'm like having a conversation with them like I'm talking to you about things that nobody had ever
Really
discussed
explain.
with me before. So that it was comfortable. I was comfortable. And that means a lot to me. If you can remember me as a child, being comfortable is important. And so I left my mom's house and I'm like, okay, that happened. Went back home. Next thing I know, people are knocking on my door.
Of course they are.
They tracked you all the way down. Huh?
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm like, oh, hi. And they would say, is there anything we can do for you? You know how it goes.
Right.
And I'm like, nah, I'm good. And so they would come and visit me, and I'm like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That's fine. I think, and missionaries would come and they go. You know how that happens, and so they come to visit me from time to time, and I would invite them in. We'd talk, and they'd leave, and it's just life kept going on. Did you have a question?
Oh, no. I was just like, your experience, you said you felt comfortable when you talked to the missionaries?
Yeah.
What was it was it just like everything started clicking, or you just kind of like pushed it to the side, like, well, that was nice, that made sense, or what made it take that next step to?
There were years in between. It might not have been years, it might have been months, because I believe that it was 1986 when I went to. This was the same year my husband died. 1986 that I went to Wyoming. And in 1987 when I got baptized. But there all of those months in between there, I was like not actively being taught.
Right.
It just, they would come and they would go, and it was no big deal. Yeah. But comfortable, that says a lot, but it just didn't mean anything to me at that point. It didn't mean action at that point.
Okay.
But I remember some of the sister missionaries were so sweet, and they impressed me. And I'm like, these are nice young ladies. That I was impressed. But it wasn't until I got my set of missionaries. I think it was like in September. I had just had experience. So my number 2 child was my challenging child.
Ooh, me too.
Carmen,
I hope he's watching. Me too.
And so I started going to. I had already been gone to school to be a cosmetologist, and I had my license and all that. And I was going to school I was in the process of becoming an instructor, and that meant I had to do evenings. And so I got a babysitter, and my number 2 child terrorized the babysitter. Terrorized.
Yep.
And so I don't know if she even remembers that. We'll see. But anyway.
You'll see when she watches. She's gonna have something.
But I ended up coming home, and I quit doing the night thing because my children were more important to me than work. And so I came home, and it was that day that I came home frustrated as all get out. That's saying it mildly. But the missionaries pulled up in the drive. I'm like, what?
Anybody trying to talk to y'all?
But that was the first time I laid eyes on my missionaries. And so they wanted to come back and talk. I'm like, today's not a good day, but you can come back another time. And they did. And so it was really kind of all downhill, I guess. I slid into baptism from there. But the key here is at that point in my life, I was studying. I was reading a book called The Melchizedek Truth Principles.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was it an LDS book or?
No.
Oh, wow. Really?
No.
Huh.
So it's something my mom had put me on to, of course, because we talked a lot. We had, philosophical discussions from my teenage years up, my later teenage years on up to this point in time. And so we always talked, kind of had deep conversations. And so she said, here, you need to read this book, because my mom was a voracious reader. She would always have like 10 books in the bed with her. My husband to this day doesn't understand why I would have stuff in the bed. Well, anyway, that's another story.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I like to read.
But anyway, so I was reading this book, and there's another book. In the back of the book, there was Secret of the Psalms was another book. And this particular book, let's see how I can say this. It talked about the Psalms and maybe has something like incantations.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. And it was that's all I can tell you about that. You have to look that book.
You gotta find that one yourself.
But the key here, though, is that I was learning principles. I was reading about the power of God at this point. And at this point in my life, I wanted to know about the power of God.
Okay.
I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that there was power there, specifically when I was reading about these incantations, I want to call them. And I don't know if that's a true way to portray it, but when I was reading that, it was a power that was being given off. It's like you do this and this will happen kind of thing. That's what these principles were. But anyway, so I was looking for that. And so I was talking to the missionaries about that, and they saw the book because I showed it to them. No, I'm sorry. At that point, it was the 6th and 7th book of Moses. I apologize. But anyway, they said, this is demonic, they thought.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, they did. And I had a fire going at the time.
Wow.
Like, can I throw this in the fire? I'm like, okay.
They offered to throw it in the fire?
Yeah.
Wow.
And these are your missionaries?
I'll have to show this to my missionaries.
Thank goodness for preach my gospel.
Anyway,
Jeez.
well, I think never mind. Another story. But the key here is one day they showed me Joseph Smith's video, the first video. I'm gonna say it's the first video, and I had an experience. I felt like I was there. I knew that had happened because I was there. I saw it. What I saw on the screen. I saw. I had seen before.
What do you mean by that? Like, you feel like you legit felt like you saw that in a vision and dream or something like that, or it just seemed
like a deja vu type thing?
Yeah.
No, I felt like I had actually seen it happen.
Okay.
To him when it happened.
Okay. Almost like a witness. A witness of this event.
Yeah. I think.
That's very possible.
The key here is there's a lot of things that I think our psyche and our spirit understands that we don't necessarily connect with on the outside of us. Yeah. That's always been my experience. And so when my missionary recited the Joseph Smith's history, you know how you missionaries do.
Absolutely.
Right?
The first vision.
I knew it because I saw it. I could see it. It happened. I knew that happened. It just was beyond a shadow of a doubt. I knew that.
Wow. It's like the veil peeling back a little bit.
Yeah. And that's kind of been my experience with life. It's like, there's just things that I always knew that I didn't have any way of connecting with outside of myself.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Now, your journey, just listening so far, is like a great testament to how prepares us. Like, you had your mother, your grandmother, who just intellectually, kept books and knowledge in front of you, and then you were always inquisitive of the next thing. Like, your spirit was very sensitive and just like preparing for up to this moment. Like, you now just saying, like, I've seen it, and Crispin making a comment about the veil being pulled back. It's like, that could have been a moment literally where the veil was pulled back. The Lord showing you, like, you literally witnessed this in your before coming. And now this is just you, the Lord helping you remember, like, this is the gospel. that He's prepared for you to receive.
Yeah.
Amen.
It's amazing how like the Lord prepared your family, because your mother was in that same searching for truth in everything, which, you know, and even prophets have said there's a little bit of truth in all
Everything.
in
Little or a lot, and
yeah.
almost everything
And
shared.
It's kind of interesting to see your story, because you can see all of the different truths and how it's building one step at a time until you get to that experience where the veil is peeled back and you are able to recognize truth.
Yeah. That sums it up. Thanks.
Thanks for coming out.
It's because growing up, I just remember on these shelves, I've seen all these books, and they just talked about like mysteries, African mysteries, mysteries of the pyramids, and just stuff like that. Like, it's always made me inquisitive to always be open to listen and hear something new, and anything that is revealed. Like, I feel like I always will give it an open ear, because you've instilled that in me, and that's just been how grandmother is, and that's just how our family is, that we're open to new things, and that we give everything a place, you know, first before just trying to push it away. And so I think that's a gift, you know. I think to be able
I agree.
to be open, have open ear to receive something that's new and completely different.
Yeah. So many people are just like closed off, especially when it comes to something they're passionate about.
Absolutely.
They still won't like just be open to learning new things outside. And that's awesome that how you guys were just prepared in that way. I do feel that's a gift for sure.
So I was asked a question once, and, you know, kind of leading on what you're saying. A friend of mine who I brought to church says, "What made you join this church?" And I in my life, I felt like I've been to churches where everything is emotional. And then I've been to churches where everything is mental.
Absolutely.
And exactly. And so the church for me is a culmination of those two pieces of my life, just all brought together in a nice little package.
Absolutely.
You know, just all together in one place. And so that's kind of what I explained to my friend. This just helps me be all of me in one place, as opposed to in different places. I'm sorry?
I'm going to use that too.
You gotta take that with you.
I grew up Catholic, you know, everybody always asks, you know, like, what made you join the church and stuff, you know, so it was like a journey, like how I landed too as well, so I never know how to explain that, but I really like the way you put it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
awesome.
that.
That's awesome. I have a question. So you have been an educator that's been your career, is education in one way or another, and in a lot of different facets from what we read with your bio. And, you know, studying sociology, genealogy, your own personal studies, and or more organized study of like African American history, African American genealogy, and all these things that you've studied and now teach, facilitate, and administer. Was there ever a time in your growth now in the LDS church where learning about the church's history with African Americans or just people of African descent, was there ever a time where that maybe affected your membership in the LDS church?
That's a really good question. So let's look at my experiences as higher and lower.
Sure.
So because I am a principled thinker, because I I have gained a testimony of the things that I know are true that I've been looking for. That sits up here.
Gotcha.
So that's more important than anything else. Now, when I started having questions about who the heck I am, meaning, okay, so in my mind, I'm going to take you through my thought process. In my mind, so we know we come from kings and queens. That's what they used to tell us as we were kids, right? And so we came from greatness. And so then we came to America. And there's this gigantic gulf in between, right?
Absolutely.
And so my thought process, and this is kind of where I started when I Actually, I started going to school after my kids had were grown up, or at least this one was
Teenagers.
preteen actually. The key here is I'm thinking I need to study this. I need to know what's the difference between then and now. What's the historical timeline? I'm looking for a timeline. And there's this gulf, and the gulf is like in the ocean, really, literally, where our people came from greatness, went through the transatlantic slave trade, and here we are here.
Right.
Now, I have a testimony also that we're supposed to be here.
I agree with that. Yeah.
That I know for sure that needed to happen. I don't understand why it had happened the way it did, but there are answers to that too. Not to necessarily to go into here, but the key here is when I got to the point where I started learning. I need to go before that, because as I was reading the Book of Mormon for the very first time, reading it all the way through and studying it, I found us in the Book of Mormon. The other sheep. The people who I am were there too. And as I read the Bible, and as I read through Darius Gray's, what's the name of his?
Blacks in the Scriptures. That one.
No, the books that they did.
Oh gosh,
That's okay. So we'll get to that one, or you can put it in the comments.
Yes, we will. We will, because I know that one. Yes.
When he went through talking about God and what he did with our people in the Bible, it's there. We just have to study and find it, because it's been just like we hear a lot of times the phrase, a lot of plain and precious things have been removed from the scriptures. That's one of them, because we have been there all along. Of course, we were there. How do you have a Bible and have a time period and a whole people that just disappeared? That didn't happen, but we don't know the story. We don't know the connections, because those things have been removed for whatever reason. So a lot of us, and I say us, meaning us Black people, don't know who we are.
Right.
What Rafiki, you don't know who you are. But anyway.
Clip it.
Yeah. Please.
But the key here is that if we knew who we were, we wouldn't have the questions that we do, and people wouldn't have the problems that they do with the church. Because if principles are reign, then all of the relationships are just subsequential. They're not actually the issue, because we're talking about the relationships we have and people's issues. They're just people's issues. That's not anything to do with the fact that God is real. He has a plan for us. He has always had a plan for us, meaning all of us, and that we're all his children,
Yep.
So that's foremost for me. But then, when it came to, I've had experiences being discriminated in the church, but it just didn't mean anything to me, really, because the principle is true.
Yeah.
And so, so if, and then that's something that I wanted to also say. I think I heard you say before, if the Book of Mormon is true, then Joseph Smith was a prophet, and I call that the equation.
Absolutely.
Then the church is true. And if the church is true, what have you against being baptized?
Facts.
That's just, then that's the way it worked for me. It's like, if this is true and this is true and this is true, this is a no-brainer. So I didn't really have to think it through. And it's the same with the issues of being Black in the church and the ban on the priesthood and all of that. Heavenly Father knows what he's doing, and I trust him. And so if we have to struggle, then we do. It's just kind of like the people in Alma's time where and I'm thinking it's Alma, they were under tyrants, the Lamanites who enslaved them, but the Lord made when they were righteous, the Lord made their burdens easy to bear. And I think we're going to have to remember that as we go along here.
Yeah.
But the key here is that as we have to be tried, we have to remember who we are. And as we do, I think we, will come to the understanding that Heavenly Father is in charge of everything.
Yeah.
And it's just that simple for me.
We often forget this is a test. And who said that the Lord's church is exempt from that test?
Exactly.
In terms of choosing him over what the adversary likes to keep surface level issues like race and prophets being wrong, this and that. But we often forget in this debate that this is a test, and it's a test of faith.
Right. And each of us have that same test. We have to decide whether we're going to believe God or we're going to believe all this other stuff that's happening.
That's something that's been logically for me. I'm like, when we go through life and we're learning about the gospel, to expect it to be easy and to always be easy, it's not going to be. I mean, it'd be too easy if we didn't have any of these race issues or anything. Everybody probably join the church. Maybe, I don't know. But it would be a less hindrance if this stuff didn't exist. But it causes more faith. It makes you actually really not have to just go with the logical perspective. You have to go with the spiritual perspective and have an anchor. And I think that's what's key is when you have those spiritual experiences, no matter what people say on the internet or people who don't know about the gospel, what's going to keep you there? What's going to keep you in place and not drift away? It's your testimony, and you have to gain that. And I think that's what's important when you're joining the church. And despite its history or anything like that, you have to be committed. And I think that's what keeps us and helps everybody stay grounded and not move.
That kind of brings me to one of the questions that I think you were asking me about. Have I had any experiences in the church that may have made me want to walk away? And I can say honestly, no. One of the things that I really thought was pretty cool for myself is that I went to church every Sunday, and I said went. And I think that it wasn't until COVID, I think, that I'm like, going every Sunday, it's kind of optional. I work some Sundays, one Sunday a month. And if I don't feel good, kind of thing. But before that, it's like I went to church every Sunday.
I remember going on vacation. We would go to church on vacation.
On vacation.
We'd find a ward, made sure. Bring your church clothes, pack your church clothes on vacation. Yeah. I remember. Even if it was 3 days, we on the weekend, we'd find the church.
We go find somewhere.
But I mean, it's good. It's a good principle thing, But I just remember that it was.
Yeah, but the key here is that, and that I think opened the door for me to say, maybe I don't have to go to church every Sunday. And so there have been some days that I didn't, and I don't feel like it today, or I'm just going to rest today, or whatever. And so I see that as the opening for me not kind of slipping. I'm going to call it slipping. And so I had to sit myself down and have a little talk. And well, what are you going to do? Is this the way you're going to live, or is this the way you're going to live? You have to make a decision. And so my thought is, even if I don't want to go, even if I don't feel like I don't feel good or whatever, feeling tired or hurting because, getting older, that happens. Let me just tell you right now, over the hill means you're going to start having pain. That's what they mean by that. They didn't tell you that, but that's what that means. I found that out the hard way. Anyway.
The knees.
Yeah. So I came to a realization or understanding, having that conversation with myself, that even if I don't go for me, I need to go for the people who see me, who, because our congregation, there's not that very many.
Not that many.
In fact, we just had a young man get baptized 2 Saturdays ago, and I haven't turned him on to Brothers in the Foyer yet, but I will.
Okay.
But the key here is that you don't know how your life affects the people outside of you. And so that's a conversation that I had. And then I guess, with the Spirit, these are the conversations I have, spiritual conversations. In the Spirit, I'm thinking, this is not just for you. This is for the people who are around you that need to have a testimony just because they're looking at you, seeing, you're there every Sunday. They can too.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's interesting. I feel like sometimes people forget, like, we're serving other people by just going to church. And sometimes when you look outside yourself, you end up doing things that are good for yourself. But I did want to ask you a question, switching gears here a little bit into your genealogical work and some of the stuff that you've gotten into.
Okay.
How did you get into that? How did you know that that's what you wanted to kind of devote your life to, and go back in history and look at that and find out that's your passion?
Actually, I fell into it a little bit. So when I first joined the church, after the missionaries had gone on to their next, wherever they were going, I got genealogy missionaries. So, and everybody doesn't get that. I didn't know that.
I've never heard of it.
I know.
That's actually a really good thing. They should start.
So they had missionaries that were doing, the indexing that we do now, they did differently back then.
Oh,
so they had genealogy missionaries for that purpose. And the genealogy missionaries, wow, I forgot this story. Brother and Sister Smith, they helped me to start to build my tree. And at that point, my great-grandmother was still living.
Oh, wow.
And so I was able to interview her and learn things. And of course, you have to know that the struggles that people go through often make them not want to talk. So there was a lot of stuff she wouldn't tell me. I'm like, at least give me your mom's name. And because it's my fourth generation, literally living, I was able to get to her. And because I was able to get the fourth generation, I was able to do more research. So now research is really becoming a part of my experience in finding out more about my particular family. And so at that point, his older brother was 2 years old, and we used to go, you'd take him to the historical society where he would be all on the floor and I would be doing microfilm rolls anyway. But the key here is that I had an experience. So it was Roots. I have to tell you that I didn't watch Roots when it first came out because I was too sensitive.
Okay.
It was really not something that I could tolerate. My spirit just said, "Oh no,
It's too much.
this is over the top."
Too much.
It was a lot, and so I didn't watch it. In 1979, I think is when it came out.
I think that's right. Yeah.
But now we're in the 80s, and so it came on again. I guess it was an anniversary. Maybe it was 1989.
10-year anniversary of the show, something like that.
Or maybe something like that. And I had an experience. I mean, I had one of those experiences like Father Lehi had, where he fell on his bed.
Okay.
Literally. Yeah.
Takes you out for a little bit.
And I was out.
Yeah.
I was aware, but I wasn't communicating, and people thought, "Oh, what's going on with you?" But I just felt a burden.
Okay.
It was, I mean, physically I felt a burden, and this is what has led to my life's work. Because I went into a lot of research then trying to figure out what was going on. And I finally had to get on my knees, on my face, and ask the Lord, what is this? Why am I feeling this way? What's going on? And I got a lot of revelation during that. So that's another story. But as I started to kind of exercise my way through understanding what the Lord wanted me to do with this burden that he gave me, the first step was literally genealogy, and to help people to understand who they are. Because, what you need to know about genealogy when you get started, you start with yourself. Absolutely. You find your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, and you can't get back over there across the ocean until you have done those steps. And so I do have some friends who know who their family is across the ocean.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have not gotten there. Honestly.
I went back, mine from Congo, so the Congolese, and so.
Well, what's interesting is that we have done our DNA, and our DNA goes back to Kenya.
Yeah.
A specific place in Kenya, and a specific people who say that they are descendant from the Queen of Sheba and
oh wow,
and Solomon. Yeah. So
There you
it's
go.
kind of interesting. But that's through DNA. I still don't have the paper trail, is what we call it. But the key here is that when I started doing my genealogy, my great grandmother, right, that was just one line out of 8 at the 4th generation line that I'm still doing family history. And it wasn't easy for me. Now, my husband, on the other hand, we started doing his genealogy and boom, boom, boom. It was all right there. I was so mad. But the key here is that I realized that when I started doing my genealogy, I told myself, in order to be able to do this, I'm going to have to dedicate my life to it, which is what happened. And so that's where the genealogy for me has become my career. And things have happened and transpired that I never would have thought.
Yeah.
You know, I never would have thought this is where I would be in my career. So this is my career as an adult, not something. I wanted to be a mathematician as a kid.
What?
Yeah. I loved math.
Really?
Yeah.
So did I. I loved math.
Yeah.
I love the fact that
That's some special people, man.
if you give me the pathway and the knowledge, I can always find an answer.
Exactly.
That about math is what I absolutely loved, especially when it
And
got
it's
to
always gonna
advanced
be
math.
true.
Absolutely. So
Geometry
yeah,
was one of the things that I thought was really interesting. How is this angle congruent to that angle? And how, you
Right.
know, it's like, how is that possible? But you know, I like that a lot.
So you said you had this. I don't know if you want to share it too much. If you could, just regarding your revelation of wanting to do genealogy, like what was that experience? You said like you felt this burden. What was the burden? Was it ancestors? Was it your family? What was it that made you feel this?
It was my people. It was so okay. I'm watching Roots, and it was during this that I already told you. You already know how sensitive I am. It just became a burden, a physical burden, watching what had happened to my people. And one of the fears that I had was that I would never find my family because they were lost in the ocean. You know, they just did. They were not. I would never find out who they are. And so, so that was it. And what had happened in between the time that I'd had that experience, and I prayed about what it was that the Lord wanted me to understand about that experience, led me to a couple of scriptures. And one of them, I guess I'm going to say Isaiah 18 through 20 is really talking about us. And I don't tell people this that often because, there's always going to be some pushback. In fact, I looked through our institute manuals on this particular scripture, and it didn't give the interpretation that I understand.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Okay, yeah.
I'm like, okay. But Isaiah 18 talks about, it says, woe to the land in the shadow of wings, whose land and rivers have spoiled, to a people tall and I don't remember that part. But anyway, the whole point is this is saying, pay attention.
Right.
I want you to know that this particular people are going to bring the gift to the Lord, the Mount Zion. 7 verses, and it's got the chiasmus thing going on in it.
Yep, absolutely.
And at the end, it says, these people will bring the gift to the Lord, the Mount Zion. And so I did a lot of study on that. This is the scripture that I was given. This is what I'm to understand. And yeah, it's prophecy.
Wow.
Yeah.
But 19 and 20 go on to talk more about the people of Egypt. And so whenever you read those in my interpretation, whenever you read about the people of Egypt and Ethiopia, those are talking about our people, period.
Absolutely.
It'd be cool to
Talking about us.
It'd be cool to actually see like your background too. It's like me, I'm split between like 2 oceans. Because like, being from Haiti,
Yeah.
that the slave trade that goes to the U.S. and then to France and then from Africa.
Yeah.
We're just like all around, so
Yeah.
it'd be actually cool to see, where I'm actually from. So
Oh, so you haven't done your DNA yet?
no, I haven't.
yet.
I know I have some family somehow in France, and some in Congo, and some were migrated in the U.S. like way before, because we gained on the independence in 1804. So it was a lot of like moving around like that. So
Well, I hope you are going to research your tree.
yeah, I want to.
I know that there's some difficulty in finding records from the Isles of the Sea.
yeah.
But I also know that there are records to be found. And so that's one of the things that I learned, which, like, as I was saying about our people who were lost in the sea, well, there's ship records.
Yeah.
It's a website called Transatlantic. Is that it? I'm sorry. We'll put that in the
Yeah, we'll add that.
comments all too. But the key here is that there are people who are documented having gone through the transatlantic slave trade on the ships and all of that. Something that I didn't know, but when I found that out, I'm like, I haven't found my people there yet because I haven't even got to the ocean yet. But I'm still trying to get through slavery and getting to the people who are on the other side. But I'm getting closer every day because I do this literally almost every day, and so I'm able to help hopefully even you guys to get started, build your tree, and keep looking because they can be found.
I actually have I know where my last name is from. Like there's like a mountain in France actually named after my last name. That's why I know it's from.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I know that part.
Does.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's not a small thing. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
I would definitely research that.
Yeah.
It's almost like a mountain.
Yeah.
I like that.
So to kind of wrap up, Mom, for you had this whole experience of being prepared by the Lord to find the gospel, the fullness of it. It brought you into genealogy and doing the Lord's work. For someone who's never, or who's discovering about the church right now, or who's scared of taking that first step, I want you to think about what made you take that first step, and what would you want to share with that person if they were kind of on the edge of like, I don't know if I want to join the church. I don't know if I want to take that next step in pursuing the gospel. What would you want to share with them?
I guess the first thing that I would like to say is you have to kind of know who you are. I mean, you have to have those internal discussions and who am I and what part of me is most important. We like music. We like, to talk. We like to go to movies. So those things about us. But what I'm talking about is that internal dialogue, because I believe everyone has that spirit that is there, that's their relationship with God that tells them what's true and what's right.
Yeah.
And so that's really the first thing. What is your relationship to God? And if you know that, then if you listen to that, you'll know what to do. And the truth for me, it's everything. So anywhere there's confusion that's not God. Mm-hmm. If you're confused, if something is bothering you, wherever you are, you need to move to where there's peace. Move to where the Spirit guides you and gives you comfort. And for me, that has always been the gospel of Jesus Christ. And my testimony is, even though when I was a young person, I abhorred following any rules that society put on me, I'm like, no, I got to figure this out for myself. You can't tell me what to do. Okay. There are reasons for the rules. They give me peace. They help me to know. They give me comfort. They help me to know I'm where I need to be, and I'm in what I call the right stream. So when you're in the right stream, it flows.
Right.
And it keeps going, and there's no end. But when you're in the wrong stream, there's all kinds of hiccups and problems and all kinds of issues that make you feel uncomfortable, unhappy, all of that. But in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that I am a member of, I have peace. And that's everything.
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well,
That's great.
mom, Sherri Camp, Sherrita Camp. Thank you so much for being here on our podcast for Brothers in the Foyer. We really appreciate you for sharing your testimony and your story.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I did put my testimony in the book, My Lord, He Calls Me.
Oh yeah, it's in Desert Book.
Yes.
Go and check that out. We'll have a link in the description for that.
If you listen to the book, I'm the male voice of that. That's my voice.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I did the
you
audio.
for it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. So small world. Yeah. Okay.
Sweet. Okay. Well, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with your friends or family. And if you want to support Brothers in the Foyer, you can please donate to our links that are down below. You can have a tax-deductible donation and be able to help us continue to grow and reach more people. If you felt the Spirit today, we ask that you may share this with someone who may feel inspired by it as well. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Inviting all to come and try.